I feel like I've made this video about a half a dozen times now. A government agency, in this case the Australian Federal Police, are pushing for 50-50 gender representation across a traditionally male-dominated workforce. Now apparently this has caused a stir online, and if you go over to the Australian Federal Police's Facebook page, you can see why. It's attracted over 5,000 comments. Now this should come as no surprise to anyone. The AFP committed to a 50-50 gender quota last year. As Miranda Devine reported, the AFP got Brodericked in reference to Elizabeth Broderick, the misogyny hunter. Devine describes the formula. Take a traditionally male institution, add a media-driven sexism scandal, and call the gender experts of Broderick & Co. to the rescue. And the conclusion is always the same. There's a culture of toxic masculinity, and the only way to fix it is to hire more women. It's a jobs for the girls program. That's the Broderick solution in a nutshell. But let's have a look at how the AFP itself describes it. We're recruiting. Yes, again, the AFP needs more women in its ranks. We need a better gender balance, with our ultimate goal being a 50-50 representation of men and women. This is because we need to be representative of the community we serve. Why? Since when does the idea that you need to be representative of the community trump the need to keep people safe? To date, the AFP have a good track record of preventing terrorism attacks. And what does the general public think when we hear that another terrorist plot has been thwarted? I hope there are an equal number of men and women on the counter-terrorist team. No one cares, because it's not important. We care about the police being able to do their job and do it effectively. We don't care about the shape of the genitalia of the people doing it. And in reality, neither does the AFP. Here's the list of the AFP's priorities straight from their website. Investigating complex transnational serious and organised crime, protecting Australians and Australian interests from terrorism and violent extremism, representing Australian police and law enforcement on an international level, developing unique capabilities and exploiting advanced technology to support Australia's national interests. Continued responsibilities include providing community policing services under contracted arrangement to the Australian Capital Territory and territories of Christmas Island, Cocos Island, Norfolk Island and Jervis Bay, a national protection capability to ensure the protection of specific individuals, establishments and events identified by the Australian Government as being at risk, a national counter-terrorism first response capability focused on aviation security and protection of critical infrastructure, making sure half of our staff have vaginas. Oh, sorry, that's actually not on the list. And you know why it's not on the list? Because it's not important. And if the AFP truly wants to be representative of the community they serve, where's the quota for Asian Australians or Buddhist Australians? Well, of course, they don't have those, and that's how you know this particular justification is bullshit. Now, here's what they said after the backlash. There's been a lot of commentary on the fact that we're targeting women with this recruitment. We'd like to clarify a few things. In the AFP, women currently comprise 22% of sworn police and 13.5% of protective security officers. Our goal is to increase this proportion to 35% in both streams by 2021. But why? As always, these ridiculous quota systems are underpinned by a set of false assumptions. One, that an underrepresentation of women in an occupation is a sign of gender inequality, although as you would have noticed, it doesn't seem to apply when men are the ones that are underrepresented. Two, that an underrepresentation is because of discrimination. Neither of these assumptions are valid. The only way to conclude that any occupation that doesn't have a 50-50 gender split suffers from discrimination and is therefore a sign of gender inequality is if you believe that men and women are identical in interests, talents and variability. And of course, to believe that, you have to ignore the plethora of evidence on sex differences. Because if you acknowledge that men and women are different, then you would have to accept that equality of opportunity would not equal equality of outcome, which means it would be entirely unreasonable to expect an outcome of a 50-50 gender split across occupations. And even when you compare males and females with comparable talents and abilities, you get different outcomes. This study looked at two cohorts of mathematically precocious 13-year-olds, meaning that they were identified as being in the top 1% for mathematical reasoning ability. They then tracked these cohorts over the following 4 decades. What the researchers found is that males and females had somewhat different life goals and priorities and took somewhat different career paths, as you can see here by the type of occupations they chose. For example, males were more likely to go into STEM fields, whilst women were more likely to go into health sciences, K-12 education, and the arts. But interestingly, they reported almost identical levels of satisfaction with their careers, lives, and relationships. To quote the conclusion from the paper, early manifestations of exceptional mathematical talent did lead to outstanding creative accomplishment and professional leadership, but with notable sex differences. Life satisfaction was uniformly high for both sexes, as was psychological well-being. The mathematically talented were doing exceedingly well for themselves and society. Compared with mathematically gifted women, mathematically gifted men expressed stronger preferences for developing high-impact careers and were willing to invest more time in their careers. Conversely, the women expressed stronger preferences for and devoted more time to advancing family and community compared with the men. Both groups advanced society, though in varying ways, travelling different paths to their current highly productive and satisfying lives. And at the end of the day, isn't that what it's all about? Isn't that what parents want for their children? For them to be able to forge the kind of life that will maximise their satisfaction in their careers, relationships, and life in general. And if that's the case, what does it matter that men and women on average take different paths to get there? The irony, of course, is that the gender diversity ideologues want conformity through equal representation whilst denying the natural diversity found amongst men and women. The good news is that attempts to get 50-50 gender representation, as the Australian Federal Police and other Australian government agencies are trying to do, will ultimately fail. But the bad news is that some women will be convinced to follow a particular occupation when they would be happier working somewhere else, whilst denying men of careers that could be truly satisfying for them. Prioritising a forced artificial notion of equality through social engineering is antithetical to a free society in which individuals are free to forge their own paths in life. So, have you been affected by social engineering policies carried out in the name of equality? Let me know your experiences in the comments below. I'll see you next time.